Hi, my name is Tom, and this is everything you need to know about LRAS AD diagrams for A-level economics. There are two LRAS AD diagrams that you need to be familiar with. This is the Keynesian LRAS AD diagram, and this is different because Keynesian economists believe the economy isn't always at full employment. So you can see it isn't a full vertical line, it sort of is a curve. It goes from horizontal to vertical. Now, an outwards shift in AD, which is this line here, occurs when one of C, I, G, or X rises, or if M falls. That would cause the AD curve to shift outwards or shift to the right. So if this happens, real GDP increases from Y to Y1 or Y1 to Y2, depending on what your axes are. But average price level also increases P to P1. So there's some economic growth there, but there was also some inflation. An example of a policy that would do this is a reduction in taxes, which is likely to increase consumption, which would lead to an increase in real GDP, but also an increase in inflation. Now there's also a possibility of a policy leading to an inward shift of AD, and this happens if C, I, G, or X decreases or if M increases. So when this happens, real GDP decreases, Y to Y1, and average price level also decreases, P to P1. So real GDP falls, but so does inflation. And an example of a policy that could shift AD inwards is raising interest rates, which would incentivize people to save, so consumption would fall, so AD would fall. Now, the LRAS curve is determined by the four factors of production: land, labour, capital, and enterprise. So, if one of those factors improves, then the LRAS curve would shift outwards. And this would cause GDP to rise, Y to Y1, and price level to fall, P to P1. An example of a policy that could shift LRAS to the right would be an increase in skilled migration, which would improve the factor of production, which is labour. Now, an inward shift of the LRAS curve is caused by a worsening of these factors of production, and this would increase price level P to P1 and reduce GDP Y to Y1. This is generally quite bad. And something that might cause this is if part of your country was invaded, this would reduce land and lead to an inward shift of the LRAS curve. Now, the classical LRAS AD model is slightly different, and it's just a matter of opinion. So some economists argue that the Keynesian diagram is better, some argue that the classical model is better, and the only difference is, in the classical model, the LRAS curve is always at full employment. It's always vertical. It has the same components, AD is still C plus I plus G plus X minus M, and LRAS is still factors of production, but it's a different opinion on how the economy works. And you can use whichever diagram you prefer in an exam. So shifts in LRAS. In the classical model, when LRAS shifts outwards, inflation decreases and GDP increases. So this is actually the same as in the Keynesian model. However, classical economists have a slightly different opinion on shifts in AD. They believe when AD shifts to the right, it's a bit complicated, but firstly, the economy is at point B, it then moves to point C, and it's on the short run aggregate supply, the SRAS curve, and then in the long run, it shifts back to the LRAS curve at point D. So therefore, in the long run, the only thing that changes is an increase in price level. So they would consider an increase in AD bad. In conclusion, you can use whichever diagram you want in an exam. I'd recommend the Keynesian model for essays because it's easier for me to remember, but both are equally valid. You do need to know both models, however, as there are short answer questions or multiple choice questions on both diagrams. Thanks for listening.